Imagine coming home after a long day, ready to pull into your garage, only to find a car sitting there like it owns the place. No note, no explanation, just pure entitlement. If Karen thought she could get away with this, she had another thing coming. Because I had the perfect way to make sure she never tried this stunt again. And trust me, she did not see it coming. I pulled into my driveway expecting the usual routine: kick off my shoes, grab a cold drink, maybe mow the lawn before sunset. But the second I turned in, my plans vanished. There, parked inside my garage, was a silver SUV. I hit the brakes hard just staring at it. The garage door was wide open like the car belonged there. It didn't. I don't own an SUV. My sedan was still out on the street where I had parked it earlier that morning. So whose car was this? At first, I figured maybe my sister had dropped by. She has keys, but her car's red, not silver. Then I thought maybe a neighbor's guest accidentally pulled in, but that theory died the second I walked up and saw a half-drunk iced coffee sitting on the hood like someone had made themselves at home. I circled the vehicle, checking the plates. Nothing familiar. Tinted windows, doors locked. This wasn't some mistaken turnaround. No, this was deliberate. So I walked across the street to the most likely suspect, Karen. Now, Karen wasn't her real name, but let's just say she earned the title. You know the type: mid-40s, perma-scowl face, bob haircut, sunglasses even when it's cloudy. Always had something to say about other people's lawns, trash bins, fence heights. Basically anything that wasn't her business. I was halfway up her walkway when she came out like she'd been waiting for me. "Oh hey," she said casually, sipping a drink like we were old friends. "I figured you'd be back around now." "Do you know whose car is in my garage?" I asked, straight to the point. She didn't blink. "Mine." I stared at her. "You parked in my garage," she shrugged like it was nothing. "It was open. I needed somewhere to put it. You couldn't have knocked, called, asked." "I was in a rush," she said, brushing me off. "Besides, your driveway's too steep. My back's been bothering me. The garage was easier." I just stood there, trying to decide if this was real life or some twisted prank. "You know that's trespassing, right?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. It's not like I'm hurting anything. You weren't even using it." "That's not the point. It's my garage." Karen tilted her head and gave me a fake smile. "You don't have to be so uptight about it. I'll move it eventually." "Eventually," I repeated. "No, you'll move it now." She laughed like I was being dramatic. "Relax, I'm going out in a bit with some friends. I'll take care of it then." With that, she turned and walked back inside her house. I stood there, stunned. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. She acted like she owned my property. Like I was the one being unreasonable. I could have called the cops. I could have had it towed. But the way she smirked, like she had all the power, that's what got to me, so I walked back to my place. I grabbed my spare garage remote and shut the door, then I locked the side door too. Petty, maybe, but I was just getting started. That night I stayed home. I expected her to come over yelling, demanding I open it. But nothing. She didn't come back. And by the time I went to bed, her SUV was still trapped inside. The next morning, it was still there. And still, no Karen. I figured she'd realize what happened and come knock on my door. She didn't. So I went to work, left the garage locked, spent the entire day smiling at the thought of her trying to figure out how to get her car back. When I got home, still there, still locked, still no Karen. That's when it hit me. She probably thought she had control of the situation. So I raised the stakes. The next morning, I packed a bag and left town for a few days. I had a work-from-home gig and figured I'd work remotely from a friend's lake house about 3 hours away. Before I left, I checked the cameras. No movement, no activity. Just a very expensive SUV sitting in my garage like a trophy. By the time I hit the road, Karen was already messaging me. The text started calm. "Hey, can you open the garage? Need to grab something real quick." Then got passive-aggressive. "Not cool locking someone's car inside, you know." Then they escalated. "You're gonna be sorry for this." But here's the thing, she never asked permission to park there in the first place. And now she wanted me to treat it like her spot. She kept texting, kept trying to call. I ignored her, and that's when the panic set in. By the end of day 2, her texts read like someone on the verge of a breakdown. "Open it, please, this isn't funny, my purse is in the car. I think my phone's dying, help," and then silence. I didn't hear from her at all on day 3, but that wasn't the end, far from it. Because when I came back home 5 days later, I was in for another surprise. I pulled into my driveway around noon after 5 peaceful days away. I half expected the SUV to be gone. Maybe Karen had found a way to get someone to break the door open. But nope, it was still there, sitting like a stranded animal, dust on the windshield, same coffee cup on the hood. But then I noticed something else. The side door to the garage had marks around the handle, scratches, dents, like someone had tried to pry it open. And when I opened the main garage door from the remote in my car, she exploded out like a wild animal. Karen, hair messy, shirt wrinkled, face red, eyes wild. She practically stumbled out of the garage, waving her arms in the air like she was escaping a hostage situation. "You psychopath!" she screamed. "You locked me in there." She stomped toward me, fists clenched, barely able to form sentences. "You know what I've been through. No food, no water, no bathroom. You are going to jail for this." I didn't even flinch. I calmly stepped out of my car and leaned on the hood. "Karen, you parked in my garage without permission. I told you to move your car and you said you'd get to it eventually, then you walked off. That's not my problem." Her face twitched. "I only went in to grab my bag. I didn't know you were going to lock it." "So, you admit you entered my garage without permission?" I asked. "I was parked there," I shrugged. "Exactly, illegally." She threw her hands in the air and paced in circles. "You're sick, absolutely sick. You know what I had to do in there." "I was drinking melted ice from the cup holder and peeing in a grocery bag." "Gross," I said flatly. "But again, not my fault. You literally walked into someone else's property and treated it like it was yours." She pointed a shaky finger at me. "You're going to regret this." "I'm calling the police. Right now. Go ahead." That stopped her. She froze, her eyes darted, and you could practically see the gears turning. She realized something. If she called the police, she'd have to admit to trespassing. She'd have to explain why her car was in my garage, why she was in there, why she didn't leave when told to. So instead, she played the next card in her deck, deflection. "This is abuse," she shouted. "You knew I was in there. You left me trapped like an animal." "Nope," I said, pulling out my phone. "Didn't know you were still inside. I locked the door from my phone app and left. Thought you'd moved your car like any normal person would." Karen lunged forward, trying to snatch my phone. "Give me that." I stepped back. "You really want to add assault to your list?" That stopped her cold again. She huffed, spun on her heel, and stormed back to her house without another word. But I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, that evening I got a knock on the door. 2 police officers. "Sir, we received a call from a woman down the street claiming she was unlawfully locked inside your garage for several days. Mind if we talk?" I nodded. "Of course, come in." I showed them everything. The text she sent me, the security camera footage, her walking up, ignoring me, parking, going into the garage, waving me off when I told her to move the car. Her saying, and I quote, "Just be a good neighbor and let it be." The officers exchanged glances. "Did you know she was still in the garage when you left?" one asked. I shook my head. "Nope, she never told me. She refused to move the car, shut the door in my face, and that was that. She went back into the garage at some point, but she didn't say anything. I left the next morning." They didn't seem shocked. One officer sighed and said, "We've actually had a few noise complaints about her before. HOA's got a file." "She's a real piece of work," I muttered. "Well," the officer said, "technically, this isn't unlawful imprisonment. She entered your garage without permission. She refused to leave. You left not knowing she was in there. Frankly, if anything, she could be facing a trespassing charge." "I'm not trying to press charges," I said. "Just want her to stay off my property." "We'll have a talk with her," they said, and they did. I watched from my window as they walked over to Karen's house. She answered the door in dramatic fashion, arms crossed, clearly already working herself up for a performance. But it didn't go the way she wanted. I could tell from her face. By the time the cops left, she looked furious. And I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more wild, real-life HOA drama, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber keeps me motivated to dig deeper, write more, and bring you even crazier stories. Your support means the world. It's what keeps this channel going strong. So stick around because we've got way more chaos coming your way. The next morning, my mailbox was stuffed with notes, actual handwritten letters from Karen. One said, "You've made a powerful enemy." Another said, "You better watch yourself. People talk." And the best one, "You think you won, but this isn't over." Oh, it was definitely over, or at least I thought it was until the HOA got involved. Because somehow, Karen decided to twist the whole situation and file a complaint against me. The HOA emailed me the next day. Subject: violation review request. According to them, a resident had filed a grievance stating I intentionally created a hostile environment and used my property in a malicious way. I laughed out loud. But I wasn't laughing for long because I had to show up at a hearing with the HOA board to explain what happened. And Karen would be there too, and trust me, she wasn't done trying to flip the script. But that part of the story, it was about to get wilder. The HOA hearing was held on a Thursday evening in the community clubhouse. It was supposed to be a simple meeting, just a few board members, a table, and 2 chairs across from each other. But thanks to Karen's flair for drama, half the neighborhood showed up. Some people were there out of curiosity. Others just wanted to watch the fireworks. Either way, it felt like a court hearing, except instead of lawyers, we had HOA volunteers in matching polos. I walked in calm, documents in hand. Karen, she showed up in a neck brace. I'm not joking. A full-on foam neck brace like she had been rear-ended, arms crossed, hair styled like she was going on a talk show. She even brought a small packet of tissues, ready to cry on command. The board greeted us awkwardly. "Let's keep this civil," one of them said. "We're here to clarify the situation." Karen was ready. She launched into her speech like she'd rehearsed it 100 times. "This man locked me in his garage for nearly a week without food, water, or proper sanitation. I suffered trauma, physical distress, and humiliation. I feared for my life." She dabbed her eyes with a tissue she barely used. The board looked at me like, "Your turn." I opened my folder, pulled out my phone, and calmly placed both on the table. I have texts, I have footage, and I have the officer's incident report. Then I played the video. There she was, strutting into my garage, waving me off, refusing to move her car. There she was again, sneaking back into the garage before I left. Then the texts: "You locked me in. I've been in here for days." The board didn't say a word for a solid 10 seconds. Finally, one of them leaned back and said, "So, she parked in your garage without permission, ignored your request to move, entered your property again, and got locked in by accident." I nodded. "That's correct." Another board member looked at Karen. "Did you really write that he should watch himself?" Karen tried to pivot. "That was in the heat of the moment. He endangered my life. What if I'd passed out in there, or worse?" "But you weren't hurt," someone said. "You weren't unconscious. You had access to your phone. You even sent multiple texts." Karen slammed her hand on the table. "He locked me in a box," I shrugged. "That box is called a garage. It's attached to my house. And you entered it knowing you weren't allowed to be there." Then I leaned forward. "If you want to press charges, go ahead. The police already said I did nothing wrong. But if you keep filing fake HOA claims, we can revisit the part where you trespassed." She went quiet. The board ended the meeting with a statement that they would be closing the complaint with no further action, and warned Karen that continued personal disputes don't fall under HOA responsibility. Basically, it was a polite way of saying, "Stop wasting our time." The meeting was over. But as I walked out, Karen stormed after me. "This isn't over," she snapped. "You're going to regret humiliating me in front of everyone." I turned, calm as ever. "You did that to yourself, Karen." She stared at me, absolutely fuming, but said nothing else. I figured it would die down after that. But the following week, things escalated. First, I noticed odd things happening around my house. My trash can mysteriously got knocked over 3 times in 1 week. Then someone poured something sticky across my doormat. Sugar water, maybe. But the final straw, a nail in my driveway. Right where I parked my car. The only person petty enough to pull this kind of nonsense was Karen, but I didn't have proof. Yet, so I did what I should have done earlier. I installed more cameras, front yard, driveway, side fence, all covered. 2 nights later, I got the footage I needed. There she was, sneaking across my yard in the dark, hoodie over her head like she thought she was in some spy movie. She crouched low and slid something under my car's back tire. Then she walked off like nothing happened. The next morning, I checked. Another nail. I reported it. Not to the HOA this time, but directly to the cops. I gave them the footage, the timestamps, and a brief statement, and this time, they didn't just brush it off. They paid her a visit. I watched from my window as the officer knocked on her door. She opened it, all fake smiles, and, "Oh, how can I help you, officer?" Then they showed her the video. Her face dropped instantly. She tried to explain. said she was just checking on his yard and might have dropped something, but the officer wasn't buying it. They handed her a citation for property damage and warned her that another incident would lead to charges. You'd think that would have shut her down. But Karen, she had one more ridiculous stunt left, because a few days later, I found a flyer taped to my mailbox. And not just mine. Dozens of homes in the neighborhood got one, in big bold letters. This man locked a woman in his garage. Do you feel safe around him? She made a fake flyer. A whole page of twisted lies trying to turn the neighborhood against me. I collected every copy I could find and brought them straight to the HOA and the police. Both of them were fed up at this point. The HOA fined her immediately for distributing false materials under the community bylaws. The police added it to her file. And finally, people started pushing back. Neighbors she used to manipulate started talking, and not in her favor. I overheard one guy mutter, "Karen's finally losing it," while picking up his mail. Another neighbor, an older woman, came to my door and said, "She tried to get us all to turn on you, but we're not buying it. We've lived next to her longer than you, and trust me, she's done worse." I smiled. "Thanks. I'm just glad it's finally ending." But it wasn't ending yet, because Karen, desperate and spiteful, had one more plan, and this time she didn't just go after me, she went after my job. A week after the flyer incident, things had gone quiet. Too quiet. Karen wasn't stomping around the neighborhood like usual. No drama, no dirty looks, just silence. At first, I thought maybe the HOA fine had finally humbled her. Maybe the police visit had knocked some sense into her. But I should have known better, because the next thing she did wasn't petty, it was dangerous. I work remotely. Software engineering. Most of my work happens from home online through secure portals and conference calls. One morning, I logged in and saw 3 missed calls from my manager. Then a flagged email, then another one. The subject line, "Security Breach Investigation." I opened the first message. Apparently, someone had tried to access our internal servers using my employee credentials. The attempt was blocked, but it raised red flags, major ones. My stomach dropped. I hadn't shared my login info with anyone. I hadn't clicked any suspicious links. And I definitely hadn't tried to log in at 2 a.m. on a Saturday from a random IP address across town. But then I remembered. During Karen's time locked in my garage, I'd left my house unattended. My home office was right off the hallway, and though I'd secured the garage, it was possible she'd gotten in before I locked everything. I checked the footage again, and sure enough, 2 hours before I left for my trip, Karen had snuck in and wandered through my garage for at least 10 minutes. The side door to the house had been unlocked at the time. She didn't just help herself to the garage. She probably helped herself to my workspace too, and I had no idea what she touched. I immediately informed IT, who started a full sweep. Then I pulled the footage and handed it over to my employer. They weren't happy, but when they saw the logs and the bizarre history between Karen and me, they realized I hadn't caused this. But still, it was a massive headache, hours of calls, verifying my accounts, changing every password I had. Karen had crossed a line. She didn't just park in my garage anymore. She had brought her insanity into my personal life, into my career. I could have gone straight to the cops again. But this time, I wanted to take a different approach, something she wouldn't see coming. So I talked to my lawyer. See, the flyers were defamatory. The nail incidents and the property damage, documented. The unauthorized use of my workspace, caught on camera. And the attempted breach into my work system, potentially criminal. It wasn't just petty harassment anymore. It was turning into a harassment case with digital evidence to back it. My lawyer drafted a cease and desist. It was simple, legally worded, and direct. Stop all harassment, public or private. Stop distributing false information. Stop tampering with property, or we go to court. And this time, it wouldn't be a neighborhood tiff. It'd be a civil lawsuit with actual damages. I had the letter printed, signed, and delivered to her front door via courier. She refused to answer, so it got left taped to her mailbox. 2 hours later, she was at my door. Karen was shaking, face red, waving the envelope in her hand like it was radioactive. "You think this scares me?" she hissed. I didn't flinch. "It should." She stepped closer. "I didn't do anything illegal. You entered my house. You tried to use my work credentials. You left nails in my driveway. It's all on video, Karen. What more do you want?" Her expression cracked for a second. Not guilt, not regret, just raw panic. "You ruined my life," she muttered. Do you know how embarrassing it was to be trapped like that? I crossed my arms. No, because I don't trespass into other people's property. She pointed a shaky finger at me. Everyone in this neighborhood used to like me before you moved in. I laughed. They tolerated you, that's not the same. She stood there for a beat, breathing heavily, and then without another word turned and stormed back toward her house. The next few days, silent again. No flyers, no sabotage, no drama, until I got a text from a neighbor, Susan. It read, "You're not gonna believe this. Come to the clubhouse." Now, I walked down the block curious, and when I stepped inside the clubhouse I saw it, an emergency HOA meeting in full swing. At the center of it all, Karen. She wasn't yelling this time. She was begging. She was trying to appeal the decision from her last fine and get her community privileges reinstated. The HOA had banned her from the clubhouse, the pool, the gym, and even the neighborhood events, and now she wanted it all reversed. "I was manipulated," she cried. "He set me up. He wanted to humiliate me." But the board wasn't having it. One member raised a hand. "Karen, you've had 6 complaints filed against you in 3 months. That's more than anyone in this community in the past 5 years. Another chimed in. "This isn't about one incident, this is a pattern. You can't keep blaming everyone else." Then Susan spoke up. "We all saw the footage, we read the texts. You did this to yourself." Karen's jaw dropped. She looked around the room searching for support, but there was none. People were tired of her, tired of the chaos, tired of the endless drama. The board ended the meeting with this final line. "Karen, your privileges remain suspended, and if this behavior continues, we will take further legal action." She stood frozen, eyes darting, then stormed out without a word, and as she passed by me, she didn't say a thing, just glared. But the war, it was almost over. The very next day, a moving truck showed up in front of her house. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the moment I saw that moving truck, I knew something big had shifted. Karen wasn't just retreating for a day or two. She was packing boxes, real ones. Greg stood in the driveway, arms crossed, supervising the movers. He didn't look upset, just tired. The kind of tired you only see on a man who's had years of chaos and finally decided he was done. I didn't say anything at first, just watched from my porch. But then Susan walked by, sipping her coffee like it was the juiciest tea she'd ever tasted. She gave me a nod and said, "Guess she finally hit her limit, huh?" I shrugged. Or maybe the neighborhood finally hit theirs. By noon, the truck was almost full. Karen hadn't been outside once, not to load a box, not to say goodbye, not even to glare at me, which for her was out of character. But that silence, that was her final move, the unspoken way of saying you win for now. Later that evening, Greg rang my doorbell. I opened the door, a little cautious. He looked embarrassed, but calm. "Hey," he said, "just wanted to clear the air before we go." I didn't respond right away, just waited. Greg rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I know we didn't exactly start off on the right foot, and I didn't get involved when I should have, but," he paused, "I saw the footage, and everything you said was true." I nodded. "I wasn't looking for drama, I just wanted her to stop crossing the line." "I know," he said. That line was a mile behind her months ago. There was an awkward silence before he added, "We're moving in with her sister out of state, starting fresh. Honestly, it's probably for the best, for everyone." "I hope it is," I said simply. He gave me a small nod, then headed back toward the truck. A couple hours later, the engine fired up, the back slammed shut, and just like that, Karen was gone. No screaming, no last-minute threats, no police. Just a silent exit, and a peaceful one, but the story didn't end there. A few weeks passed. The neighborhood was quieter than it had been in years. Kids played in their yards again. People waved more. Even the HOA meetings were less tense without Karen showing up to nitpick about trash bins or unsightly bird feeders. Then one morning I checked my mail and found a thin envelope, return address, a small law office in Karen's new town. I opened it carefully. Inside was a formal apology, signed by Karen. No frills, no sugarcoating. It said, "To whom it may concern, I acknowledge my behavior toward you was inappropriate, invasive, and, at times, unlawful. I accept full responsibility and apologize for the distress and inconvenience caused. This letter is issued as part of an agreement to avoid further legal escalation." That was it, no excuses. No passive-aggressive language, just facts. Apparently, my lawyer's cease and desist wasn't the only paperwork that reached her. Turns out her new HOA had already received a complaint before she even finished unpacking, and they didn't have the patience ours had. She tried to start fresh, but the problem wasn't the neighborhood, it was her, and it finally caught up to her. I framed that letter, not because I needed to remember her, but because it marked the end of something bigger. For years, Karen had gotten away with doing whatever she wanted because nobody called her out. People avoided confrontation. They let her control the narrative, but all it took was one time. One moment where someone said, "Nope, not here," the garage incident, that was the turning point. And every single move after that, it unraveled the fantasy she had built around herself. Now she was just another person on a moving truck. Another chapter closed. A few weeks after she left, I finally reorganized my garage, cleaned it top to bottom, added new lights, repainted the walls, even upgraded the security system. I reclaimed the space, not just physically but mentally, because for too long her nonsense had taken up way more room in my life than she ever should have. And now she was nothing more than a bad memory with a paper trail. But there was more. The HOA, probably trying to save face and clean up their image, offered me something unexpected, a seat on the board. I nearly laughed when they suggested it, but then I thought about all the neighbors who thanked me. The people who quietly told me they were relieved someone had finally stood up to her, so I accepted, not to play neighborhood cop, but to make sure no one else ever went through what I did. Not on my street, because it only takes one Karen to make your life a nightmare. And it only takes one neighbor with a backbone to stop her.